What is up, YouTube? That's here today. I'm back to another Pokemon VGC 2023 Regulation D discussion video. Today what we're going to be doing is breaking down each of the respective Urshifu forms. Where do they come from? How do you get them? What do they do? Who do you pair it with? What's special about them? And how can you use them in your own games to be the best VGC player possible? You can see I have one of each of these Urshifus. They look very similar, but they are very different. One's going to be a water fighting, and the other is going to be a fighting dark. If we were to go outside of this picnic right here, all right, if we were to go outside of this picnic after taking Kratom back in the Pokeball, we're going to be able to look at what the Urshifus look like in the team preview setting, which you can see is right here. They have the exact same sprite when you see it when you get into the game. So if you're using Urshifu, your opponent doesn't exactly know which form you have. And when you see opposing Urshifus in the team preview, you don't exactly know which one that is either. You have to be able to understand which Urshifu your opponent's going to be using based off the tells that they give from what other teammates are surrounding them, which we will be breaking down later on in the video. So you can tell that if we go to our boxes here, there are differences in these Urshifus. One is going to be a dark type. This is the single strike variant, and one is going to be a water type. Each of these get respective moves. Each of these have respective like resistances and teammates and generally playstyles that even go with these two Pokemon. If we were to take a look at Pokemon Showdown right here, we can see the two different Urshifu forms right here. They have the exact same base stats, but I would generally say good rule of thumb is the dark one is a little bit more aggressive, tends to be built more with like scarf, sashes, and bands. And the Water Terra one seems to be built still with sash, but more like vest, mystic water, and other sort of damage reducing items or other things like safety goggles is more common on this guy, be able to swap in on spores or not be able to redirect it by a Mungus. So let's talk a little bit about like what makes Urshifu a good Pokemon. If we were to take a look at Urshifu here, it gets the Unseen Fist ability. This is going to make it so all of this Pokemon's contact moves, close combat, Wicked Blows, Sucker Punch, Surging Strikes, they all break through Protect. So this is going to help you generally just complete your flow charts and not have to really care about what your opponent's doing defensively. Very, very good. But they each get respective moves. There's the Urshifu Dark and the Urshifu Water. Urshifu Dark gets Wicked Blow, which is going to be a 75 base power move. You only get 8 of them, right? And well, you only get 5 plus BP max. And it always results in a critical hit. And so the fact that this Pokemon gets a crit, which is going to multiply its damage by 1.5, or this move's power by 1.5, that's not the big reason why Urshifu's broken or busted. It's that crits go through any sort of like screens or stat boost your opponents have, but also any intimidates you have. So the good thing about these Urshifus, why they're so good, is your opponent can intimidate them into the ground and they don't care because their signature moves just crit through everything. So that's why they're like the perfect Pokemon to splash on any team, because it really invalidates a lot of the defensive capabilities your opponents have. Like I said, no screens, no intimidates, no like iron defenses or anything like that. Urshifu just kind of comes in there and messes them up. So like I said, Wicked Blow, very, very good move. This did get a slight nerf coming in from Sword and Shield. This used to be an 80 base power move. It got toned down to a 75. Urshifu Rapid Strike, on the other hand, gets another really good move. It's going to be Surging Strikes. And Surging Strikes is only a 25 base power move, but it hits 3 times. So it's still that 75 base power, and all 3 hits are a critical hit. So it's the same base power move. But what's really cool about this one is you can break focus sashes with this. So I really like the Surging Strikes. You're going to start to see a little bit of a pattern. I tend to enjoy playing a little bit more with Urshifu Water. I feel it makes a much better, more well-rounded mon that can swap in, soak a little bit of damage, and then repin things a little bit better than Urshifu Dark. I think Urshifu Dark in specific metas where you're a lot more aggressive can be very, very good because it can like solidify matchups against things like Shadow Rider and stuff like that. But Shadow Rider's not in the format yet, so we don't really need to be Urshifu Dark just yet. Now that we've talked a little bit about what makes these Urshifus different, I want to talk about what makes them the same. They're generally going to be built on very similar aggressive cores that can capitalize off speed control. Yes, there are Pokemon that can greatly benefit from being their teammates, and it's a really good skill to have to be able to see what Urshifu your opponent's using based off the teammates that they have. So let's go over some common teammates for each Urshifu form. Let's start off with the Pokemon that are commonly built with both of them, right? I think the number one Pokemon that is commonly built with both of them is going to be Regieleki, right? Regieleki can be holding a sash or anything, but basically Regieleki plus an Electro Web here, being able to hit both the opponent's Pokemon, lowering their speed by 1 will then put most Pokemon within the correct speed tier for an Urshifu to be able to capitalize with their respective special move, be that Wicked Blow and or Surging Strikes. So Regieleki and Urshifus go together like peas in a pod, very, very hyper-aggressive core, and it's just generally really, really strong. Another Pokemon that goes well with both these for various reasons is going to be a Mungus, right? Being able to redirect damage away from these Urshifus is very nice, but also let's think about this. What are some of a Mungus's weaknesses? Things like it's a poison type, right? So weak against Psychic. You can swap in the Dark type Urshifu to block that if you want. Weak against Fire. Swap in the Water type Urshifu. And case in point, this guy's weak against Grass. Swap in the Amoonguss. Weak against Electric. Swap in the Amoonguss. So Amoonguss is a good Pokemon that can go with either of these Pokemon and will fit right in. And this is kind of where things get a little bit weird. I would say, I think I said at the very start, these Urshifus tend to lean a little bit more towards aggressive and defensive play. The Dark one leads more towards aggressive. The Water one leads a little bit more towards defensive. Let's break down what some common partners are for Urshi Dark. So I think a good Urshi Dark partner is going to be something like a Shenpao, right? This makes complete sense. So yes, it's another Dark type. Yes, it still gets Sucker Punch. They're basically the same type of Pokemon, right? Like really, really hyper-aggressive, big, fast Mons. They can use humongous Sucker Punches. But remember, Shenpao and its sort of Ruin ability are going to cut the defense of everything on the board, which is going to make it even easier for you to get those big KOs with Urshifu if you already have speed control up. Remember, we were talking about using Regieleki earlier. So something like Urshifu Lucky with like a Shenpao in the back to close out. Very, very solid core. Let's talk about another Pokemon that is commonly built on this core, and that's going to be something like a Tornadus. This is where your speed control comes from. Tornadus gets that Prankster Tailwind. You can also go for things like Icy Wind. You can also go for Hazes if you wanted to get rid of your own speed drops. But you can also even go for the brand new move, which is the Bleak Wind Storm. Has a 30% chance to lower your opponent's speed, and it hits both opponents. Very, very good stuff. Like Tornadus is like something like a Sash Urshi here with like a Covert Cloak Tornadus. Like, you're going to get in and deal like a lot of damage and always get that like speed control up that you need. So it's very, very solid. You can even put like the Sash here in a lot of situations. Sash on the Shenpao and go for like a Scarf Urshi Dark. Right? And like this is just a really, really aggressive core that wins the game in like 2 turns. And like last but not least, I think a good defensive option that would cover up for some of Urshi's weaknesses. Remember, we are a dark fighting type. We have huge weaknesses to like fighting, huge weaknesses to fairy, flying, and things like that. I think a good last mon to throw in here would be something like Goldango. If you're looking for like a good, well-rounded Pokemon to like solidify a board state, while also being a good pivot for things that would go for like Will-O-Wisps into your Urshifu or Spores into your Urshifu. You could swap in Goldango with that good as gold ability to be able to mitigate a lot of those things being immune to status moves. So I think this is like a good set of mons that would go with Urshi Dark. But let's talk about Urshi Water. I like I said, I really do prefer Urshi Water a little bit more in this current meta. And even throughout the history of Urshifu, I feel like I really just think water fighting is very, very cool typing. So let's go Urshi Water. Urshi Water with that Rapid Strike. So some common things that I like to use this Pokemon with are going to be things like Mystic Water. It's probably one of my favorite items used on this guy. Obviously, you could still go like Scarf Bands, Sashes, anything like that. But I really do like the ability to go for the Mystic Water. 1.2 is nice here. Assault Vest is another really solid item as well. So very, very solid stuff. I think a good partner for this Pokemon would be, my number one favorite partner is going to be Rillaboom. Right, Rillaboom is such a good partner here. It's able to pivot in, get those fake outs, go for the grassy terrain to let your bulkier Urshi Waters, because Urshi Waters is going to be built a little bit more on the bulky side. Yes, they still like to have a lot of attack, but you take a lot out of speed and make it so you have just enough speed to outspeed things in like Tailwind or at like -1 or +1s from things like Alekis and Icy Winds and stuff like that. So yeah, Rillaboom being able to come in and set that grassy terrain and then pin with like fake outs, very, very good partner. What's Urshi weak against? Like we talked about, Electric, Grass, you pivot in the Rillaboom. What's Rillaboom weak against? Things like Ice and Fire, pivot in the Urshi Water. Very, very good teammate. Another good core here is going to be something like a Heatran, right? Heatran's a very good mon. So if you're pinned on the Heatran by like, big water mons, you pivot in your Urshi. You're pinned by ground mons, you pivot in Urshi, you don't die, and then you repin them with your water typing. So these Pokemon just go very well together. And I think Heatran just like, you're starting to see this as a very, very solid core. Like a Crest would fit very good in here. A Genie would go very good in here. If you're looking for like one more, like more niche mon, kind of like how we had the Goldango as the example for the Urshi Dark, I think a cool mon that is going to start to see more play as the format develops is going to be Hisui and Goodra. Right? You can use either Goodra, but the Goodra Hisui specifically is going to be really, really cool. What's Goodra weak against? Like ground moves, you can pivot in, soak the damage. You don't resist damage on the Urshi Water, but then it just repins those mons. And then remember, you have Sap Sipper here. So if they're going to be going for big grass attacks in your Urshi, you can pivot in the Goodra, get that Sap Sipper boost, and it's going to be really, really fun and cool to see. Also, Urshi, similar to Urshi Dark, still has that weakness to fairy. So you can pivot in this Goodra, soak some damage, maybe with like an AV Goodra set, and then repin those fairy types as well. One thing that I want to talk about as well is what Terras to go with these guys, right? I think both the Urshi forms have Good and bad Terras. I think Urshi Darks tend to double dip their Dark Terra a lot to go for even bigger Sucker Punches and Wicked Blows. You can also see them going like Fire Terra to make themselves lose that weakness to Fairy. You could see Flying Terra on teams that have Earthquake spams, or even like Steel Terra in some situations to make sure they take less damage from both Fairies and Flying. It's another really good option. I think Urshi Ground, sorry, not Urshi Ground, Urshi Water, I think a lot of people like to go Grass just because it lets you avoid like Rage Powders and stuff like that. It makes you take less damage from things like electric attacks. I found also that I really like going Urshi Water with Ground Terra, like I was just talking about. It makes a great lead versus Regielekis. They overcommitted that slot. You just go Ground Terra, take them out. You don't even have to have like Terra Blast on it. I just think it's a really, really cool way to play. It really helps in that Thunderous matchup as well. They're going to see the Urshi Water in the team preview. They're going to really overcommit. If you had like, I mean, if you had Grass Terra, they could still hit that with like Thunder Waves. You become immune to those Thunder Waves. They'd have to go for Scary Faces or other things to be able to even hit you. So I like the Ground Terra. Let me know what you think about that. But that's my personal take on what Terra is used for these guys. And yeah, the ultimate question of which one is better, right? Which one is better? They're both really good. S tier, there's nothing wrong with either of these. I think they're very team specific. If you're playing a more hyper aggressive like race to the finish team, you're probably going to be wanting to use Urshi Dark. But Urshi Water can fit just as good on those teams. I would say Urshi Water tends to be, like I said, a little bit more defensive. If you're looking for a Pokemon to fill in for like a big weakness to Ice or a big weakness to Water or something like that, Urshi Water can swap in, soak that damage, and then repin those Mons. But it's really dependent on the meta. I want to hear which one you guys like more. If there's anything I didn't cover in this video, let me know. I think that I'm probably going to be using Urshi Water. I have a couple cool teams. Let me show you like a team that I'm kind of working with in my team right now that features Urshi Water. So you guys can generally see an idea of how I'm going to be playing this Pokemon in the future. Let's see if I can find it. Man, my boxes are just destroyed right now because of like how crazy everything looks. But like, let's go take a look at like this box. So I streamed with this team the other day, and it's like a Delphox team. It has like Lando, Tornadus, Goldango. We were talking about that. And so like we were talking about this Urshi. This is going to be a water Urshi with like Surging Strikes, has a little bit of priority. And you always want to use Detect over Protect on these Mons. You always want to use Detect because that's a lot harder to imprison than Protect. And we're using Imprisonmon here. Imprison's going to be a viable move in this format. So just try and use Detect if you can. But what's really cool about this team is, yes, this uses an Urshi Water because we have some big weaknesses to Ice. We have some big weaknesses to Water and stuff like that. So I wanted to be able to switch in with this guy, use a bulkier Mystic Water Urshifu to then repin things. But then also, like we were talking about, really good partners for Urshi Dark are Goldango. So what's the cool thing about this Urshifu in this team is it forces your opponent to really over-respect and over-commit and bring the things they think beat each respective Urshi for different reasons, and then those things just kind of lose to the genies and the exact set that we've set up here. Other cores that you can kind of put these guys in, though, like I said, Shenpao works for Urshi Dark. Other really hyper-aggressive teams built around Lecky and like Iron Bundle with Booster Energy or Flutter Mains and stuff like that could be very, very good. You would also tend to see a little bit more Urshi Dark in like Sun teams than you would a Urshi Water in a Sun team. So hopefully those little tips and tricks help. Let me know if you guys like these videos. And other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. Peace out, and I'll see you guys next time.